Okay, guys, here's another video on the unification of Germany, how Germany became the rather large nation it is today. Looking at this map, this is the German territory back in 1815 to 1871. The country here in I don't know, gray, this territory here is Prussia. We've mentioned them before. However, all these other colors are separate principalities and states, most notably Bavaria, Bohemia, Württemberg, Baden, Alsace, Holstein, Mecklenburg, Hanover, Schleswig, all these good German names, all separate countries. Eventually, these are going to become all united into one massive German empire. The key figure in this whole thing is this guy. I love his hat. It's a classic Prussian hat. His name is Otto von Bismarck. He was the Prime Minister of Prussia. All this starts in 1860, and unlike Italy, the unification of Germany happens relatively quickly. So there's a major conflict inside Prussia's government, and there's basically a constitutional crisis. And in order to get that crisis resolved, Bismarck and the Prussian king, whose name is Wilhelm I, this guy really in charge, and then Bismarck's running the government for him, they come up with an idea to try to unify all these various German territories into Germany with Prussia as the leading power. And both Bismarck and Wilhelm make this happen. So, in order to do that, with Bismarck, who is known for something called Realpolitik, or the politics of reality, practical politics, what he does is he engineers or creates political wars, a series of short political wars in order to get what he wants. So between 1864 and 70, Bismarck and Germans fight 3 short little political wars. They win all 3. In the first war, Austria and Prussia, in the name of the German Confederate, take the duchies of Schleswig and Holstein from Denmark. So this is Austria and Prussia working together to take both of these territories away from Denmark. He then, in 1866, picks a war with Austria, the ones he was just allied with. The Prussians easily win, and in only 7 weeks, and they conquer a little bit more territory. Now, Bismarck then dissolves this German Confederation. A confederation is a group of independent states working together, and he works some magic, and he establishes something called the Northern German Confederation. The Northern German Confederation is everything that's in, you see this highlighted, so it's this whole territory in here is the Northern German Confederation. There are 4 independent German states that the arrows are pointing out to that are a decent size and powerful, and these independent German states are in an alliance with the Northern German Confederation. The Northern German Confederation is really run by Bismarck and Prussia. Now, to get the final unification done, to complete this process, he now fights a 4th war against France. And this is a very important war called the FrancoPrussian War. In order to unite, the other countries are not going to be too excited to have a massive German empire in the center of Europe. The one country that would really protest that would be France. So Bismarck knows that he has to overcome France's opposition. So he engineers another war. In 1870, the Spanish throne was up for grabs. Bismarck encourages a prince, a Hohenzollern prince, this is the ruling family of Prussia, to lay claim to the throne. He knew that France would object. The prince had no illusions that he was to become king of Spain. This was all done for political reasons. So the prince withdrew as a candidate, but Bismarck looks at it, and the French say, hey, you can't do that, and Bismarck says, we can't, I'm going to war with you. And away we go, and we have a war. It's France against the Northern German Confederation, plus those 4 independent states. So really, it's what will become the modern German Empire fighting against France. They have a couple battles. The French armies lose, and the Germans capture Paris in 1871, which was incredibly humiliating for them. And they captured Louis Napoleon III and ransom him. France has to give up territories, and more importantly, they have to give up some reparations, which we'll get into. So during this war, during this Franco-Prussian War, the 4 southern independent German states agree to join a united German nation under the leadership of Prussia. And here he is. This is the first Kaiser. Kaiser is the German word for emperor, so that's a really important term. It means emperor. And the first Kaiser is Wilhelm I in 1871. And he appoints Bismarck as now the chancellor, the head of government. So Wilhelm I was the king of Prussia. He becomes the Kaiser of Germany. Bismarck was the prime minister of Prussia. He becomes the chancellor or head of government for the German Empire. Now, there is some legacy items that are very important with this Franco-Prussian War. Prussians, they capture Napoleon III. They cede or give up rich territories, and more importantly, they're forced to pay reparations, which means pay Germany back for the price of defeating them in battle. It's really, it's like double dipping here. The Germans pick the fight, they beat the French, and then they make the French pay them back for that. And the French were incredibly bitter. And in World War I, at the end of World War I, when Germany was on its knees, the French were ready to take revenge from the War of 1871. And they did. They forced massive reparations from the German government after World War I. And that really directly leads to the formation of the Nazis and Hitler, which we'll get into at a later date. But all these wars do relate to one another. So here we are. This is when we're all said and done. Here is the United German Empire. All this stuff in purple becomes Germany. It's massive. It suddenly becomes the military power in Europe. The Prussian government, the Prussian officers are really running this German army. And again, immediately they start throwing their weight around. And this is setting up World War I here.